Hello, all of you. Good evening. Myself is Gaurav Khadse, and today we are going to start with a topic called as gymnosperms. Gymnosperms that comes in the chapter Plant Kingdom. Okay, so let's start with the topic gymnosperms. What exactly we mean by gymnosperms? Here we split this into two parts. The first part is called as the gymnos, and gymnos that means naked, and the second part is the sperma, that means the seed. Okay, so what exactly we mean by gymnosperms? They are nothing but the naked seeded plants. That means the particular type of plants in which the seed is not enclosed within the fruit. Generally, what we see in the angiosperm, you might have studied this in the lower standard, that the gymnospermic plant, sorry, in the angiospermic plant, what you can see here, that the gynoecium is present here, and this gynoecium is divided into three parts. The uppermost part, that is the receptive part for the pollen grain, it is called as the stigma. Then the lower tubular part is called as the style, and the third part, that is called as the ovary. But at the same time, you might have seen that inside the ovary, the ovules are present. So these are the ovules which are present. So these ovules will get converted into seed after fertilization. And at the same time, we can see that the ovary get converted into fruit. So what happens in the angiospermic plant, that the seed is enclosed within the fruit because the ovules are enclosed within the ovary. But in the gymnospermic plant, we see that the ovary is not present. The ovules are naked. And as the ovules are naked, therefore the seed also remains naked. Okay, so let's see about the gymnospermic plant in detail. What the gymnospermic plants are. See, the gymnospermic plants, they are sporophytic plant, spore bearing plants. They are diploid in nature. Diploid, that means each of its cell, each of its somatic cell will have two sets of chromosome, as well as it is said to be the independent plant. This is said to be the independent plant. That means it is not dependent upon the gametophyte. It is completely dependent upon itself, sporophytic plant. Morphologically, we can see that a plant can be well differentiated into root, stem, and leaves. So if we are talking about the morphology of the plant, this plant can be differentiated into root, stem, and leaves. So this is well differentiated into roots, stem, and leaves. So let us talk about the topic one by one. That means if we are talking about the roots especially, so when we are talking about the roots, then these particular plant, that gymnospermic plant, shows the taproot system. Okay, this gymnospermic plant shows the taproot system. Now, what exactly we mean by the taproot system? Taproot system, what exactly are the taproot? The particular type of root which arises from the radicle. You might have seen about the radicle, that means the embryo is divided into some parts, in which the first one is the plumule, which is called as the future shoot, and the another one is called as the radicle, which develops into the root. So whenever we see the taproot are there, then they are generally developed from the radicle. But these roots are differentiated. These roots are having two different types of association. And which are that root association present here? Let's see here. which are the root association, in which the first one is called as the mycorrhizal root. Mycorrhizal roots. And the second type of roots that we call it as the coralloid roots. Okay, so if we are talking about the mycorrhizal root, what exactly we mean by the mycorrhizal root? Let us see this on the another page. So if we are talking about, sorry, the mycorrhizal root, what is mycorrhiza? Basically, it is nothing but the symbiotic association in between the fungus and the higher plants. Now we see this particular type of association in the pinus plant. So mycorrhiza, what is mycorrhiza? It is said to be the symbiotic association. Symbiotic association in between higher plants, or we can say in between the roots of higher plants and fungus. Okay, so here we can take the example of the pinus. How is the association present here? For example, if we are talking about the pinus, then suppose that these are the roots of pinus. Okay, and the fungus shows the association with it like this. The fungus will form a type of covering here that is called as the Hartig net, or it is called as the mantle. Either it is called as the Hartig net or it is called as the mantle. Okay. Now what happens in this Hartig net and or mantle? This, for example, if we are talking about the roots, then these are the epidermal cells of the roots. These are the epidermal cells of the roots, and we have the cortical cells too here. Okay, now you can see here that this is the fungal mycelium, but this fungal mycelium is not entering into any of the cortical cells. So these are the epidermal cells. Then these are the cortical cells. And this is nothing but the fungal mycelium. This is nothing but the fungal mycelium. Okay, and this fungal mycelium is not entering into any of the cortical cell. And as it is not entering into any of the cortical cell, therefore we can say that it shows the ectomycorrhizal association. Because mycorrhizal association is of two types. The first one is called as the ectomycorrhizal association, which you can see in front of you. Whereas the another one is called as the endomycorrhizal association, in which we see that the fungal mycelium enters into the cortical cells. Okay, so this is it, what we can see about the mycorrhizal root. And the second type of root that I have told you are called as the coralloid roots. So what exactly that coralloid roots are, and these coralloid roots are generally present in the cycas. Okay, so let us start here about the coralloid roots. I have told here the example of cycas. Okay, now what exactly happens in the case of cycas plant? For example, if this is a cycas plant, like this is our cycas plant. Okay, it has the roots too, like this. Of course, the leaves are present here. The leaves are said to be megaphylous. Okay, why? Because they are larger as compared to the stem. Therefore, they are called as megaphylous. However, we are going to see the part of this afterwards. That means the leaf afterwards. But we are going to see here about the roots and okay. So this is somewhat we can see here about the roots. So lateral branch will come from this root and it becomes negatively geotropic. That means this particular root will grow against the direction of the soil. Okay. And therefore, it appears like the corals in the sea. It generally appears like the corals in the sea. And therefore, this is called as the corallite root. Now you can see here that inside it, there is a cyanobacteria present, and the name of that cyanobacteria is Anabina azuli. Name of that cyanobacteria is Anabina azuli. Okay, so how we can say that this is the symbiotic association? Because what this Anabina azuli will do, this will give nitrogenous substances to the gymnospermic plant. That is obviously the cycas. So cyanobacteria, that is Anabina, gives nitrogenous substances to the cycas plant, whereas what the plant will do, this plant will give the shelter to Anabina. So cycas gives shelter to cyanobacteria. That is obviously the Anabina. Okay. Now these are two different types of roots that we have seen. In the morphology, the second part that comes is the stem. Okay, so if we are talking about the stem, in case of the gymnospermic plant, the stem is said to be aerial. That means it is growing above the ground. We generally see that a stem can be differentiated into three different parts. It can be underground, it can be subaerial, that means it creeps on the ground, or it can be aerial, that means it is growing above the ground. That means it is generally negatively geotrophic. So the aerial stem, this may be branched. This is generally branched in the case of pinus, or it may be unbranched, or it may be unbranched. And it is generally unbranched in the case of cycas. The diagram of cycas is drawn on the board. Okay, this is what? This is the diagram of cycas. And this stem is said to be woody. Okay, and a hard stem is there. So this is somewhat about the stem. And if we are talking about the leaf, if we are talking about the leaves here, then leaves, as I have told you here, that the leaves are generally green, photosynthetic, Obviously, this is the obvious thing that the leaves are generally green in the higher plant. The leaves are generally green and photosynthetic. So the leaves are green, photosynthetic, and these leaves are said to be megaphylous. Okay. Now, what exactly we mean by megaphylous? Megaphylous, that means the leaves are larger as compared to the stem. Here you can see in case of cycas, if we are seeing here in the case of cycas, the size of the leaf is near about 3 meters, whereas the stem is somewhat shorter as compared to the leaves. Okay. And megaphylous, that means the leaves are longer than the stem. Leaves are said to be longer as compared to the stem. Okay. Then this is obviously we have seen about the morphology. Let's move towards the vascular bundles. Okay. So if we are talking here about the vascular bundles, so yes, the vascular bundles are present. The vascular bundles are present here. Okay. But what we can see here that in the xylem, the vessels are not present. Okay. We generally see that in xylem, 4 different types of members are present, in which the first one that we call it as the xylem vessel, the second one is called as the xylem trachea, the third one is called as the xylem parenchyma, and the fourth one is called as the xylem fibers. Okay, so 4 different types of members are there. But here the xylem vessels are not present. If we are going to see evolutionary relation, then evolutionary the xylem vessels are not developed in the gymnosperm, but it is developed in the angiosperms, and it is more efficient for the transduction of the water and minerals as compared to vessels are said to be more efficient in transduction of the water and minerals as compared to what we can say the tracheids. But here the vessels are not present. So xylem does not contain vessels. And in the phloem, we again, phloem is again the complex tissue as that of the xylem. So in the phloem also we see that the sieve tube, companion cell, xylem fibers, and xylem parenchyma are present. Okay, these are different types of cells. You can see, study that in the anatomy. So in that you generally see that the sieve tubes are present for the transduction of the food material. But here in the instead of the sieve tube members, the sieve cells are present. So sieve cells are present, instead of sieve tubes. One more thing, that in case of this, what we can say, gymnospermic plants, secondary growth takes place. What do you mean by the secondary growth? It is nothing but the diameter-wise growth. It is the girth-wise growth that takes place in the gymnospermic plants. Okay. So when we are talking about the diameter-wise growth or the girth-wise growth, it takes place with the help of the meristem. And that particular type of meristem, we call it as the cambium. Okay, so here we can see that a cambium is present for the secondary growth. So the cambium is present for performing the secondary growth. That means the girth-wise growth. You might have seen a giant sequoia plant. Okay, you can see some pictures on the internet that a bus or a car is passing through the tunnel which is made in the what we can say the what we can say trunk of that particular plant. Okay, so that much wide that plant is. And why had it had become so much wide? It is only because of the secondary growth. And the secondary growth is because of what? It is because of the cambium. Okay, so this cambium is present here. Next to that, we can see that the reproductive parts, and in that we can see that this gymnosperms are said to be heterosporous. Gymnosperms are heterosporous. That means it has two different types of spores. The first one are called the male spores and the second one are called as the female spores. That male spores are called as the microspores, which are the male spores. Okay, and the second one are the female spore that are called as the megaspores. That are the female spores. Okay, and both of these spores, that may be the microspore or megaspore, they are arranged on a particular type of leaf, on a particular special type of leaf. It is called as the sporophyll. So the sporophyll on which the microspores are arranged, it is called as the microsporophyll. And the sporophylls on which the megaspores are arranged, they are called as the megasporophylls. Again I repeat. These spores are generally arranged on the reproductive leaves. Microspores are arranged on microsporophyll and megaspores are arranged on the megasporophyll. So that's it for today. Thank you very much, all of you. I hope that you people have enjoyed this lecture. Okay. Yes. So that's it. Thank you very much, all of you. Take care of yourself and we people will meet again. Thank you very much.